Hi, everyone. So thanks for joining us today for this webinar with Metric Insights, bringing your data science assets into the light of day. I'm Mike Smitherman. I look after sales and marketing over here. And today I've got with me Marius Moscovici, our founder and CEO. Hi, Marius.
Hello, Mike. Hello, everyone.
So, as usual, obviously this is being recorded on the BrightTalk platform, so it will be available up there afterwards. We have probably 30, maybe 40 minutes of content for you this morning. We'll take some Q&A at the end. So, as always, you can enter questions into the chat window or the Q&A window on the right-hand side of your screen. Marius is going to run through a few slides to start, and then I'll take over the reins, and we'll go through some product demo stuff as well. So with that, Marius, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you, Mike. So today I wanted to talk to you about data science assets and how to really get a whole lot more value out of them. But before we do that, I want to really focus in on a persona. This is somebody we're calling Debbie here, Debbie data scientist. But you can really think about data scientists in your organization. I think you'll really relate to this as being a very common sort of definition of this persona. Right? Data scientists, of course, have the fundamental responsibilities of analyzing, process and model data, and to create these actionable insights. And it's ultimately, obviously, about improving the organization, right? So whether they're studying how to reduce cost, or how to increase efficiency of sales, or how to do a better job at customer service, or whatever area they're focusing on, it's all about creating models and figuring out ways in which these models can really build a better organization. We're using data, right? So using data to really transform the organization in a fundamental way. And ultimately, if you take this very talented person who's a data scientist in an organization, that person is aspiring to make impact, right? That person is aspiring to make a fundamental change with the data and with that model that they're bringing to the organization, their insights to change the way that they're dealing with a customer, to increase the level of delight that you provide in the customer service, or to help salespeople do a better job of targeting opportunities so that they are more likely to spend time on things that actually convert, or to figure out waste and inefficiency in the organization. Many different areas where data can be really transformational organization, and all of these places are things that as a data scientist, Debbie will aspire to making a difference. But the problem is that for Debbie, and really for all data scientists, it's very difficult to actually affect change in most organizations. While it's easy to generate an analysis and to find an insight, and oftentimes those insights have the potential to be transformational, how to take that and actually make it transformational and make it something that people pay attention to and continue to pay attention to over time is a real challenge. And let's look at why that is for a moment, right? If you think about, how does a data science asset, whether it's a machine learning model, or really anything that gets created of a advanced visualization, something a data scientist creates, right? What happens to that? Let's take a look at that. So obviously, initially, it starts with the Debbie creating the new model, and determining on our own that, hey, this is something really interesting. My model is something here that's really useful. I've got a useful insight that if I can socialize it, it has potential to transform some part of the business, right? You do the analysis, identify the findings, and then take those findings. And usually those are shared initially with a small team. It might be her peer data scientists. And then after that, perhaps it's the business going and getting some of the executives from the organization and pulling them together into a room and saying, hey, here's what I found. There's an opportunity here to improve the way we're doing sales or support or whatnot, right? And oftentimes this is kind of how these insights are shared. But then the problem is, after that, things go into really there's a fork in the road, right? And there's two things that can happen with this particular asset that was created. The least common route is that this particular asset is integrated into an operational process, right? So you've figured out some way to maybe predict customer churn. It's really effective. You've proven that out. And so now you're going to take that model and you're going to apply it and integrate it into your customer relationship management model, software rather. And that way, it's going to affect how uh, customer service reps interact with customers to minimize churn, to provide offers at the right time, things of that nature. So there's some things that are created that rise to that level, that are just, they're so compelling, and they pass through all of the gates that are required within an organization to move them into an operational process. And that takes a long time, and in reality those are few and far between. uh, the problem is that vast majority of assets, almost everything else, everything that doesn't sort of just get integrated into a recurring process within the organization, essentially goes into hiding. It's not intentionally going into hiding, but it is something that just sort of, this model exists, but nobody knows that it's there, and so as a result, it's really hidden. So the way to think of it is, it's almost like you're taking your model after your presentation. It was well received. People thought, oh, that's really interesting insight. We should do some things about this. And then you're putting your model into witness protection, right? And that's crazy, because while witness protection is a really great program for maybe recovering mobsters that have testified against their peers, it's absolutely the opposite of what you want to do with useful insights that have been created in your organization by probably some of the highest paid, most talented people in the organization, right? You want to make sure that those things are that whatever value, whatever insight has been discovered, is amplified, it is continuously being used by the organization, and that's not happening. And so there's these huge costs of putting your model in witness protection. First of all, clearly you're not generating recurring business value, right? It's a one and done thing. You've got an insight, you've shared it with people. Maybe they'll remember it 6 months later. Probably they won't. It isn't being used in a continuous way. Next time somebody's thinking about, oh, well, geez, I want to control churn. What do I have on the what can I do really to help me with churn? This is a real problem. They may not even remember that a year ago there was an insight shared to them with a data scientist in that area, right? So there's not recurring business value. At the same time, there's also inevitable duplication of effort, right? And this is because a different business person can ask the same question of a different data scientist, and then that data scientist does not know that Debbie already created this. They may be in a slightly different team. Maybe they never talked to Debbie, and they'll just go ahead and rebuild the same thing or rebuild something very similar. So you're not really able to leverage that great work on an ongoing basis to make sure the other data scientists are building on top of it without having to reproduce it, because it's kind of hidden in plain view. It's somewhere where people don't know about it. And then that invariably over time reduces data scientist morale. So if you remember in Debbie's persona, her goals were, let me be effective in transforming the organization. If continuously she's creating things that are kind of going into witness protection, nobody's really looking at them beyond those initial presentations, well, that isn't really motivating to be able to go and work hard on doing more, creating more insights. Maybe she's not going to want to work in the organization anymore, or maybe she's not going to work very hard. So again, some of the most expensive, most talented people in the organization are not going to be fully engaged in the same way that you want them to. So there's a huge cost there. So obviously, it's really important to think about, how do you take these assets, these incredibly valuable potential contributions to the organization that your data science teams have created, and bring them into the light of day, right? Democratize the use of those, so that it's not just the particular person who created it and knows about them, knows where to find them, and knows how to do something with them, but it's a much broader within the organization. A lot of people generate continuous, sustained awareness throughout the organization, so that when that is useful, it is going to be applied, right? And so to do that, what do you need? Well, those assets have to be discoverables by both analysts and business users. So if I'm a business user and I'm looking and I'm trying to struggle with churn, I should be able to go and find all of the different data science assets together with the BI assets and other things that are out there that might help me with that problem. It should be just at the tip of my fingerprint, right to my fingers. Similarly, if I'm an analyst and I'm going to go build a new analysis on churn, I should be able to find, well, what are all the things that have already been created by data scientists that are here now and the data scientists that were here 2 months ago or 3 years ago, no longer even with the company. What have we created? What is this organization invested in that I can use as a foundation to go build my own analyses? I should be able to find that very easily and use it as a starting point. And then to do that, everything that gets created has to be properly categorized and classified. It can't be, oh, I've got this thing in some GitHub repo that I need to sort of search and find and interpret, and it, or it's hidden away in some shiny, app that's on some server, but nobody knows how to, where it is. Right? It has to be accessible, it has to be categorized, it has to be classified, so I can find it very easily when I'm searching for it. Right? And very importantly, all of the assets that you bring in can't just be out there because, okay, I've got a model. What is this? You need it not only does it need to be categorized and classified, but mapped to what the business objective is that it's supposed to serve, right? Understanding for a particular model, what part of the business process does it fit into, and how does it support that business process? Very important, because then you can look at a business process view and understand from there what are the models and data science assets that can support me in improving that process. So to achieve that, right, that just doesn't happen by magic. It doesn't happen by people just creating data science assets, reviewing it with users, and then sending it off into witness protection. It has to happen through a governance program. So there has to be a process by which you take and you ensure that the right assets are put into a governed space where people can find, access, and consume that. Right, and that falls into a number of different steps. The first one is you obviously need to be able to synchronize and bring in all of the assets and metadata into a central place, right? So if you have to go look 5 different places or 10 different places for your content, you've already lost because nobody's going to do that. So making a single governed environment where you can do the searching and find things, that's sort of table stakes. You've got to be able to do that. Then once you have everything, once you have that portal in place, having a publishing process where you can take content through a workflow so that 2 things happen. First of all, you don't publish everything because maybe there are a whole bunch of data science assets that were created, but some of them are no longer useful. They're not obsoleted, or there's something better. Publish the good stuff, right? So you separate the wheat from the chaff and publish the things that are really worthy of consumption. And in process of doing that, make sure that you add the necessary documentation, certify the content, add tagging, add association with business objectives, add all the things associated with data usage classification, so that anyone coming in, whether they're another data scientist or as a business user, they know what they're looking at and whether that thing is something they should go and take a look at it and use, right? And then once you've published it, then you need to know, well, are you effective? Are these assets that I've put out there, are people going to taking a look at them? Are they being used, or are they just really they're not as useful as I thought, right? So having tracking for what models are being used and who's using them and who are the people that are actively engaged with them, like that's very important. And then using that together with a feedback process that, in addition to telling you who's using a particular model, you want to be able to have a mechanism by which feedback can come back so that whether it's a business user or another analyst, letting you know that, hey, this was actually a really useful model, this very insightful, or there's some shortcomings here, and maybe can this be improved? And so in a large organization, having a feedback process where that comes in automatically, very important to make sure that from a governance perspective, the creators of that model know how to continue to optimize and know what else to work on that's going to continue to add value. And then using all of these inputs, putting it all together, and then having a change management attestation and deprecation process, whereby a model might be super useful today and the business changes, and 6 months, 9 months, a year down the line, it's no longer useful. So you need a process by which you're not just continuously accumulating content in a portal of which a smaller and smaller portion is relevant. No, you don't want that. You want to be able to continuously evaluate what is the relevant content, keep the things that are relevant, deprecate the rest for those things that are relevant, promote those for users, and then that way that becomes an asset that everyone wants to go to, because whenever they go in there, they're finding things that are really useful. So this is all about, fundamentally, in the end, kind of a fundamental paradigm shift, right? Going from just the existing sort of publish and forget model. I created this, I've got this asset, maybe I briefed some people on it, now I'm off to the next thing, and this just sits out there, to really a model where you're democratizing the access to data science, right? And in doing so, you accomplish that by creating first a single governed space. So all your analytics are in one place. Your data science asset is easily accessible together with your BI tools, with your Excel spreadsheets that are being shared. It's a first class asset within the organization. It's not relegated to some corner where nobody can find it, right? So then it's about standardizing the publishing process, making sure that there's a consistent way in which assets of different type can be brought in and can go through the right workflow, the right tagging, and the right categorization and metadata enhancements so that it can be accessible. And then making sure that then on the back end of that, there is a global search capability available to enable discoverability, so that users can come in and say, oh, what do I have associated with either solving this problem or a particular topic? And they can find not only the BI tools that they have, the traditional BI tools, not only Excel spreadsheets, other PDFs, documents, but also the data science assets that have been created towards solving that particular problem. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mike, and he's going to show you how we accomplish this goal within the Metric Insights application.
Yeah, thanks, Marius. So let me share my screen here now. Okay, so as Marius said, I'm going to sort of take you through how we think about this in the Metric Insights platform. And to start, essentially more and more in large enterprises today, it's kind of table stakes to have a centralized portal in place for all your BI and reporting assets. A lot of organizations today obviously have multiple sources of BI and reporting in their environment, and it's not practical to think that end users who have a couple of minutes every day to think about data know where to find those assets. So more and more enterprises are implementing concept of a portal solution like Metric Insights, where, to recap on this for people who've seen it previously, or to introduce it for those that haven't, essentially the portal can connect to any source of BI in the organization, whether again that's BI tools, whether it's spreadsheets, whether it's reporting in other applications, or even metrics that might be out there, and that these can get published regardless of source into this central governed space. So for example, you might take something like a Tableau workbook, you might publish it as a tile into your portal here, and when you do that in a way that it has the necessary context for your users who are accessing this. So in this case, the sales analysis workbook, picking up an image so the user knows what it is and gets a preview of it, but also tagging it with the necessary metadata and categorization so they know exactly what this asset is for. So what metrics does it contain? Who owns this content, both from a business and technical and data perspective? When was it last updated? How is it classified? Is it for internal use or external facing? Does it contain sensitive information? All of this is kind of added to these assets. So as an end user looking at it, I can see, okay, here's what it is, here's how it should be used and what it's intended for. And oh, look, it's certified. It was certified by Andrew recently. I know it's a piece of content that I can use and trust. And in these sort of environments, when they click on a particular asset, they're not getting lost in the underlying tool. We're taking the analysis and we're embedding it within the Metric Insights portal here. So I've got the live dashboard. It's logging me in as my user, but I've also got that context that we spoke about around it. So what is this dashboard? What are the metrics? Who owns it? How's it intended to be used? And so organizations are doing this for their BI, regardless of whether it's Tableau or Power BI dashboard, or it's a spreadsheet out there sitting on a file store or SharePoint. To the end user, they don't really care where these assets are coming from. They just need access to them in one place. And the portal allows you to publish these assets, to organize them on the left-hand side here in a way that makes sense for the users. Security will determine what they get access to, and they can easily come in and search through this catalog for content that they might be interested in, again, regardless of the technology that it might be being created in. So as I started with, this is kind of table stakes in a lot of organizations these days, where it's critical to have a central space like this for your BI and reporting assets so that you're getting maximum engagement with that content. But as Marius said, why wouldn't we have this sort of environment for our data science assets as well? Because effectively they're part of the puzzle here, and they're part of what people need access to when they're looking at solving particular business objectives within the organization. So what might that look like? Well, essentially what it means is that we can publish data science assets in the same way that we can our BI assets. So what you're looking at here is a similar sort of tile-based view, but in this case, we're taking models and analyses and even data sets that have been created by data science teams across the organization and putting them alongside those BI assets. So for example, one of the teams might have created an R Shiny application around customer demographics. And so we should be able to publish that into the portal in a similar way, with an image of what the analysis is, with the necessary tagging and categorization of the content, the necessary descriptions and ownership, who created it. And users should be able to discover this and click into it in the same way that they would a dashboard in Tableau or Power BI or a spreadsheet, get access to the live analysis, and again, have the necessary context and categorization around it. So in this case, again, an R Shiny app around customer demographics. To the end user, I don't really even care that this is created in R Shiny. It's just a piece of analysis that is interesting to me. We might publish, something like a Jupyter notebook. So again, it's a model that has been created, in this case, a data map around, quality of data. It's owned by someone. It's tied to a particular corporate goal that we're trying to create. It has the necessary categorization around what the model is and what it's trying to achieve, with, again, any custom fields around sort of data classification or sensitive information, anything like that. And again, as a user, I should be able to discover this. I should be able to get access to that particular map in this case. In this case, something I think hosted on GitHub. Again, to the user, I should be able to discover that without having to go out to the underlying tool. A tensor model, similar thing, the necessary categorization, regardless of where you're hosting that model, whatever repository that might be in, I should be able to go out and get access to it through the portal. And also things like data sets that you might want to publish. Again, you may be hosting those somewhere in a particular repository, but again, I should be able to access those data sets, see what they're intended for, see who owns them, and then either embed or link out to those so that I can get access to them in one place. So hopefully you can start to see that the intention here is similar to our dashboards. Whatever data science applications or models or analysis that you should be doing, you want to be able to publish them alongside the other content. And if you do that, then really what you're opening up is a bunch of additional functionality within the portal that you're making use of for your BI assets today, but that you also might want to make use of for your data science assets. And so that might be something like distribution. So something I can do within a BI portal is push content out to users. Well, I might want to do that for my data science assets as well. So maybe I want to, promote a set of data science assets every month that has been added into the portal, and I want to push that out to users via email. So anyone who has access to these models now knows they're available and what they're intended for and who's owning them, and be able to receive that in email. So I don't have to come and discover them, and I can click through to them and see what it is that we're trying to achieve and use those models. Marius mentioned, and we looked at this, the concept of search as well, and discoverability. So obviously I should be able to come in and search for something like customer demographics and understand what BI assets or data science models are available around that particular subject and topic. But something you might have seen on the tile here when we were looking at the metadata is that we can also tag this content in different ways. And one way that customers will often tag the content is by associating it with sort of the corporate goals and objectives that this analysis is really intended for. And so, we may have a corporate goal here around reducing customer churn. And this particular our Shiny model is intended to help with that corporate objective. And if I click on that corporate objective, I can see, what it is, what it is that we're trying to achieve, the goals that we're working towards, who's kind of owning this objective, both from a business and technical perspective. But in tagging the content like this, I can also go out and say, okay, well, what other analysis is out there, be it BI assets, be it data science models, be it data sets? What other assets are out there that are also associated with trying to achieve this objective of reducing customer churn? So by clicking on that objective, it's taken me into the search here. It's filtering by that particular tag, and it's bringing me back all the assets, the data sets, the metrics, the dashboards, regardless of source, the analysis, the models that are all associated with trying to achieve that objective. And within the search, I might go and filter that down more. So what I'm actually looking for is a predictive model around customer churn. And so I can start to filter out that search. But again, it aids the user in the discoverability of trying to understand what assets and content are out there that might help me. And if we tie that as well to some of this other functionality, we looked at distribution to promote content. Well, again, rather than relying on people to come and discover this content and figure this out, well, again, we can use the portal maybe to take the content that is associated with reducing customer churn in this case, and actually burst it out to users on a weekly or monthly basis. So every month, here's how we're doing with our objective. We've got our BI metric where we're tracking churn. We're seeing how it's trending over time, and we're making sure that the necessary analysis, be it dashboard or models, are associated with that metric, and people can go in and look at them and perform the analysis that they need. So, hopefully you can see by publishing your data science assets alongside all the other BI you have in the organization, you're starting to democratize and get control over what people are using. And from an end user perspective, be it the analyst or the business user, I can start to see what's out there, what are other people creating, how should that be used, and how should I be using it. So the second piece Marius talked about was then the process for actually publishing this content in the first place. And there needs to be sort of this ongoing, he showed sort of the infinity diagram around publishing content and then reviewing it and attesting that it's still relevant. There needs to be a process for doing that within the portal. And the way we support that is through the concept of what we call publishing workflows. So be it whether you're publishing a BI dashboard or be it whether you're publishing one of the data science assets that we've been looking at, you want to be able to push that through a workflow whereby people are checking the assets, they're checking the models, they're testing that they're correct, they're adding the necessary metadata and context to them before certifying and publishing them into the portal. And so within Metric Insights, you can set up these workflows that have one or more stages. In this case, it's a very simple workflow where we synchronize the content into it. We review the content that we want to publish. We add the necessary metadata and tagging, or we expect that to be added as part of the process. We assign the stage to someone, the analyst who's creating that model, and we push it into a published and certified state when we're happy with it. It could be a more complex flow where, we push it through multiple stakeholders. Maybe the analyst looks at it and signs off on it. Maybe we pass it to the business user who tests it and make sure they're happy with it before it gets published and certified. But whatever the steps are, we define those steps, we define what is expected for each step, and then we have a completion stage that pushes it out into the catalog and the portal that we've been looking at. And so in setting up these workflows, we can then assign those stages to different users. So as an end user, an analyst responsible for publishing this content, anytime a model or an analysis gets added into the system, I can decide whether that's something that I want to publish into the portal. I can move it into a review stage where, again, users may be responsible then for this stage where they're responsible for looking at the model and signing off on it, but also potentially tagging it, associating it with business objectives, classifying it in the appropriate way, and ultimately saving and moving that into a published state so that it is certified and tagged appropriately and documented appropriately for the end users. So as Marius said up front, you're not typically throwing everything into a portal like this. You're taking the models that are relevant at any point in time. You're publishing those into the portal in a certified way so that users know that they can trust it and that they should be using it. The final piece of that diagram was around tracking usage and receiving or gathering feedback about these models. It's true for any sort of BI asset or data science asset that it essentially has a shelf life. No report even is useful forever because the business changes, the goals of the business change, the way we measure the business changes. And so oftentimes obsolete content sits around alongside the relevant content cluttering these environments. So it's important we sort of track usage and gain feedback to see what is still useful to the business. And so the portal needs to be able to do that. And so what we're doing is tracking usage of this content over time. And whether it's that our Shiny app that we were looking at here, or whether it's a BI dashboard, we're tracking who's using it over time. We're looking at what's most popular still. We're looking at what's gaining in popularity, but also we're looking at what's decreasing over time, what's going unused within the system, so that we can better keep a clean set of content within the portal, and we're not cluttering it with obsolete content or stuff that's hit its shelf life. And so as an analyst creating something like that our Shiny application, that customer demographics application, I should be able to see, okay, who's using it? So who's engaging with it? Users, groups of users over time. Is it still being used? How are people engaging with it? So did I publish it and everyone kind of tried to use it, but then never used it again? Or are they like Grayson coming in, using it, and then sort of continuing to use it over time? Or are they using it once like I did and sort of never used it again because it's not useful to me anymore? So you can look at these engagement patterns and start to understand whether something is still relevant to the organization and see that, yes, people are coming in and using it still. So it's something that's probably still relevant. So usage is one sort of indicator of whether the asset, the model is still, the analysis is still relevant. The other indicator is to gather feedback from users. So when users are accessing the content through the portal, like that Our Shiny app, you can prompt those users, like you might see on a website where you gather feedback. You can prompt those users periodically to give us feedback on this model. And obviously these prompts are customizable. They can be a simple question like this, would you still recommend this to other users? Gather a score about how useful it is, but also give any feedback that they might want. So let's add some sales data into this as well. You can gather that feedback from users periodically over time, so that when you sort of come to review this particular asset, you can look at the engagement. So are we getting ongoing engagement with the content? Are people still using it? But you can compare that to the feedback that you're getting, the scores that people are getting it, and the recommendations that they're making for how it could be improved. And using this, I can make some pretty informed decisions then about whether a particular asset should remain in the portal, or whether it's something that we should deprecate, or whether it's something we should update and improve. And so those workflows that we looked at should not just be sort of a one-time publishing thing. They should be automated, that every 3, 6, 9 months, any assets that have been out there and certified get tagged for a review process. We notify the owners of those assets that they should go and take a look at them and attest to the fact that they're still useful. So hopefully that's given you an idea of sort of how you can use a sort of publishing and governance process like this to better publish content into a central governed space, learning from what a lot of organizations are doing with their BI assets these days, helping Debbie get more value out of the work that she's putting into those data science projects, and really getting end users and analysts engaged with that work, so that we're getting maximum engagement with those assets. So with that, that concludes sort of the content part of the webinar. I want to open it up for questions at this point. So I'm just going to stop sharing and go back to the Q&A window. Again, feel free to enter any final questions into that. I saw a couple coming in. And let's get those answered. So Marius, maybe you want to come off mute.
Yep.
We've got
I'm
here. So question here about onboarding and managing content, data science assets. What should we do with the large number of models and data science assets that already exist in the organization? How would you manage a process around those?
Yeah, that's a good question, because in reality, you're not starting with a clean slate. You've got a lot of things out there, and it's not obvious necessarily how to onboard. I think that the best approach when you are starting with a clean slate, when you are starting, and rather with initially, and you've got all this content, is to work with a data science team and to really figure out. Data scientists know what they believe to be their most valuable assets. So you can really kind of create the process where everybody goes and moves the things that they believe to be useful and valuable into this repository. And then and then you use, once you've done that publishing process, then you look at some of the diagnostics that Mike showed. For example, looking at what are people searching for, and specifically what are people searching for and not finding through the portal. And that kind of can sometimes bring back kind of ideas about what else should be surfaced that you didn't think about. So kind of that two-phased approach. What you know for sure is valuable, put out there, then look for what people are looking for they cannot find, and then and then gradually sort of excavate and bring that content on.
A second question here about gaining sponsorship, I guess, for a project like this. So to get this kind of governance initiative for data science off the ground, we would need executive sponsorship. What's the best way to build a business case for something like this for the exec team?
Yeah, that's always a big challenge as far as just, you do need you need to kind of get an initiative, and that requires effort. I would say that it is a couple different ways that you can approach this. One is to really look at the cost aspect of it, and we talked about that at the beginning, and build a business case around that. Look at how many. If you look at what data science assets that have been created are really being reused, right? And whether it's might not, you might not have all usage data to pull that together, but you probably can talk to your data scientists and come up with a pretty good idea, because they're the only ones who would be asked for that information, right? So you can have an idea of, okay, of the things we worked on, what percentage of the things we worked on last year have actually come back, and people have come back and reused them this year, and use that as sort of an opportunity cost metric to leverage for justification. That's certainly one thing. Another way to justify is to really look at surveying your business community and asking the question, both the data scientists and for the business users, to what extent are you aware of all the data science assets that we have? When out there today, do you feel like you're getting maximum value out of them? Do you feel like what all your peers are creating, if you're a data scientist, and are able to leverage all their work, or is it hard to find? So that's another very easy way. Not it's easy, but it's a clear way to build a business case, because then you can show that there's clear demand for a universal consumption model where people can find things and then leverage them.
We've probably got time for one more. I promised to keep this to 45 minutes, but we'll answer any additional ones offline. But we have lots of different groups within the organization creating data science assets, I guess multiple data science teams. How do you go about creating effective governance in sort of this decentralized environment?
Yeah, and that's a key question, because if you think about this, it is like Mike showed you. It's important. You might start with creating a data science asset catalog, but ultimately it should be a portal that includes all your regular BI assets, and maybe even your spreadsheets and other things. There should be a one-stop shop for everything that an analyst or a business user might be looking for, data sets, etc. So to do that at scale in large organization, you usually need like a hub and spoke model. So what you want to do is have the hub be kind of a center of excellence, where there's a small group that is setting the standards for how things should be onboarded, establishing the portal space, socializing the existence of the portal, and how to onboard additional assets, what's the minimum requirements for metadata, how to get setting up those workflows to get that working. And then after that, the actual work of onboarding content, of reviewing it, of recertifying, of all that can then be distributed out, so that each group is responsible for managing the content that they themselves own, right? So if I'm in the finance group and I'm doing models for that team, then I'm responsible for onboarding those assets. I'm responsible for checking usage on those assets, and for continuously grooming that set of content so that it's fresh for my constituents. So that distribution mechanism then scales to organizations of tens of thousands of users very easily, without any problem.
Hey, well, I think we've hit our time here. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Look out on the events section of the Metric Insights website. We've got a bunch of other webinars coming up over the next couple of weeks. Thanks for your time, and hope to talk to you all again soon. Thanks, Marius.
Thank you, Mike. Bye, everyone.